Great day, everyone. This is Jason Santos, and for today, we will be discussing environmental economics discussion number three, which is all about the climate change. Okay, so I'm very sure most of you are familiar with climate change. It has been a topic for many decades now, and I believe this has been taught to every one of us since our elementary days. And before I start my discussion, I'd like to read a quote from Tony Blair. He said that climate change is the world's greatest environmental challenge. It is now plain that the emission of greenhouse gases associated with industrialization and economic growth is causing global warming at a rate that is unsustainable. So, Tony Blair is a British politician who served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 1997 to 2007 and leader of the Labour Party from 1994 to 2007. On his resignation, he was appointed Special Envoy of the Quartet of Middle East in a diplomatic post which he held until 2015. So, again, to reiterate what I have mentioned, this is a challenge. Okay, the emission of greenhouse gases and its effect in the environment has been recognized for quite some time now. So, by the way, what again is climate change? It is a change in the usual weather found in a place, and this could be a change in how much the rain a place usually gets in a year, like if there's an increase or decrease in the amount of rain, or it could be a change in the usual temperature for a month or a season. Like now in the Philippines, for the month of March, it is extremely hot. And I'm sure most of you who are reading or listening to this lesson right now can attest to. And climate change is also a change in the climate of the earth, and it could be on the temperature, the rain, the snow, and the fall for some countries on earth. Weather can change in just a few hours, but climate takes hundreds or even millions of years to change, and it is gradual. Like, if we would notice, okay, decades ago, the start of rainy season in the Philippines is during June, okay, and now if we would look into the weather patterns, rain starts falling at around August onwards, and sometimes even during the months of November and December. So that movement in terms of months is actually an effect of the climate change. Okay, so climate change is not just some change in the current weather condition. The changes in the weather are just short and temporary. Real climate change, on the other hand, is an alteration of average weather that occurs over as much as millions of years. Okay, so it takes a really long time for the climate to change, and data historically would serve as proof that we are now undergoing such change. Okay, so what we can see here is just an elaboration of how the climate systems work. So we can see all of the elements here. We can see the sun, the earth, the waters, mountains, so on and so forth. But just to summarize all of these, what this means is that the earth actually receives most of its energy from the sun. So we receive it in the form of solar energy. And then it returns uh, it returns some of this energy that is unused into the cosmos, okay, or it ejects it outside earth. However, if the earth receives more energy than it gives away, it will warm up. So think of it like a cell phone battery that is kept charging, okay, for over 24 hours, not being removed. You would know that it is accepting more energy or much energy than it should have. And in return, what happens is that it overheats. Okay, and that's what's happening in Earth right now. Um, how On the other side, okay, if Earth loses much more energy than it retains, then it will cool rapidly. So that is the reason why most of the time it's really hot, or it's getting hotter in the world, okay, because of this climate change. Okay, so one of the global bodies known as IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, reports that we are actually undergoing a period of global warming through fluctuations in solar, volcanic, or oceanic activity. They do contribute to the warming. The IPCC emphasizes that the growth of human economy is the main culprit. So, bottom line of what IPCC is trying to point out is that the reason why this is happening, it's because of increased human activity. Okay, increased human economic activity. Humanity as a whole has been emitting greenhouse gases on a large scale since the Industrial Revolution. And then the average temperature measured in the current decade increased by about 0.93 degrees. Now, to put this into perspective, each of the last 3 decades has been getting warmer, which means that the world has kept more energy than it should give away. So, that is the observation of IPCC. And what are the effects of climate change, particularly in the ocean? Okay, we have pinpointed the ocean because we know that Earth is composed three-fourths of water. So three-fourths water, and then the remaining is land. So majority of the Earth is composed of bodies of water, and that is the main area that is going to be affected heavily. So when climate changes, it is getting warmer, like 90% more heat. What this means in the bodies of water is that it retains lesser oxygen. And when it retains lesser oxygen, it becomes more acidic. Okay? There's an increase of 25% more carbon dioxide. So some of the effects here we can see is that high sea level is rising, accelerating. You can see the effects of that increased in flooding, in particularly in coastal areas. In the Philippines, flooding is a normal phenomenon. It happens all the time. It happens year round, not just in coastal areas but also in the metro. You can see bleaching. Okay, warm water coral reefs losing its color. Okay, because of the planet warming. Another would be toxic algae. Okay, algae forms in this type of habitat where the water is much more warmer, and in return, it makes fishes and birds and mammals and even people sick. Okay, when there's more algae in water. Okay, so habitats lower oxygen levels are suffocating the marine life. Acidification, this is a phenomena where the water is more acidic, and it harms animals that builds shells, corals, clams, and oysters. And there is disruption in the fisheries. It affects the marine food web. Okay, so the food web, once a certain part of it is removed, it affects the entire chain or the web. Okay, so if you would look at that in a global scale, it would affect the global food security. Okay, so you can see the grand effects of climate change. Not this is just again for the ocean alone. Okay, so now on our next image, why do we have this picture of a cockroach? Okay, the reason I have placed this is because some people misconceive climate change into a catastrophic event wherein people will die because of extreme heat, similar to like a nuclear attack. Okay, the reality is that according to scientists, okay, climate change will unlikely destroy all living things. Okay, Even if all countries would fire their nuclear missiles, life on Earth will not be 100% exterminated. Okay, because several animals, such as rats and cockroaches, can survive a nuclear war. Okay, they can actually live uh, under the ground. Okay, and be and propagate much more faster. Okay, so they can breed much more faster. So they would easily survive a global nuclear war. Okay, so the concern is not actually with animals. Okay, why we are really very much concerned with global warming? We are concerned because of our self-preservation. Okay, humans self-preservation. Of course, we would like to ensure that we would retain our kind for generations and generations to come. Okay, so the impact of climate change really affects a lot of areas, like what I mentioned earlier, in the oceanic activities. Okay, if you would drill it down to several areas, you could see here. Let me start with extreme heat, severe weather, air pollution, change in the vector of ecology, increased allergens. The water quality is also impacted. Water and food supply is impacted. Environmental degradation, so on and so forth. So just to speak in vernacular, 'di ba nga pagka mainit daw ang panahon, mas prone tayo sa waterborne diseases like nagkakasakit ng cholera, masakit yung tiyan because water is being easily contaminated when it is warmer. Okay? Um IPCC alerts that decreasing productivity of food sources such as fisheries and grain, rice, and maize crops may lead to food shortages, and that lack of drinking water combined with increasing humidity, temperature, and pollution may harm our health. Okay, so the real effects of climate change in economics. Okay, according to the fourth National Climate Assessment published in 2018, they warned us that if we do not curb greenhouse gas emissions and start to adapt climate change, this could seriously disrupt the global economy. Warmer temperatures, sea levels rise, and extreme weather will damage property and critical infrastructure. So, impact on human health and productivity and negatively affect sectors such as agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and tourism. The demand for energy will also increase as power generation becomes less reliable. And just to bat in real quick, like what's happening right now, it is very hot here in the Philippines. We consume much more energy. Okay, we keep our air conditioning units open for a longer time as compared to the past months. Okay, we consume much more water. We consume much more electricity. Right. So damage to other countries around the globe will also affect the businesses through disruption in trade and supply chains. So you can see the effects on a massive scale. Okay, economics is second to none in measuring the social importance of such adversities, and monetary values such as cost of living, potential profits, and wages of capital tell us much about the well-being of the society. Even health loss can be appraised by looking at costs of insurance and treatment. Okay, to some extent, even forest damage or wildlife mortality translates into money through gain and loss analysis in wood, agriculture, or livestock industries. Without economics, we would have to rely on subjective qualitative assessments that lack a common denominator. Instead, we can use prices or such indicators as GDP or CPI to make intersubjective evaluations that aggregate multiple individual preferences. So here, on the next image, what we can see is a comparison. Okay, this is a projected comparison. Okay, in 2050, we could visualize a world experiencing the worst case scenario wherein the air is polluted, making us cough more. You would have to check the air quality before opening a window, or when you go outside, your eyes water and you have to wear a mask. That's really hot. You can just imagine. On bad days, a high tech mask that is if you can afford it. Okay. Depending on where you live, the temperature could be as hot as 140 degrees Fahrenheit for more than a month each year. And in public restrooms, you have to pay to use water. This we actually see right now. Okay, more and more public restrooms have to be paid to be used. Okay, because water, clean water costs more. Okay, so that is really a problem that is starting to manifest. Okay, not just globally but locally. If you would just look around. Okay, so one of the remedies to this that has been done in the past is what we call as the Pigovian tax. The Pigovian tax is a tax on any market activity that generates negative externalities. So in the past discussion, we have covered externalities. Okay, so the tax is normally set by the government to correct an undesirable or inefficient market outcome, and does so by being set equal to the external marginal cost of the negative externalities. So basically, the Pigovian tax is intended to tax the producer of goods or services that create adverse effects or externalities to the society. However, economists argue that the cost of these negative externalities, such as environmental pollution, are borne by the society. So, according to some economists, the society is really responsible for the environmental pollution because of the demand. Okay, no one will supply unless we ask for it, unless we demand it. Okay, so the responsibility is borne by the society and not the producer. Okay, that is what some economists are trying to point out. Okay, and however, economists think that in order to set the tax accurately, the policymaker needs to determine how valuable are future revenues from climate change mitigation programs. So some are really arguing that um, how much will be the future revenues, okay, if we will implement this now. So what is the value now, or NPV, the net present value, and compare this evaluation with the present cost of these programs. Okay? What this means is that the Pigovian tax might be problematic because this present value could fluctuate arbitrarily depending on how important we deem the future revenue streams are. The more importance politicians assign to the fate of future generations, and the higher the tax the present generations have to pay today. So if we would basically, if we would care more for the future generation, we have to pay more taxes now. Okay, that's what Pigovian tax is trying to point out. Okay, and these taxes at present could be very very high. Okay, so again, just to summarize all of these things. Okay, um, we are now experiencing a progressive climate change. Okay, and governments, economies are doing its part through regulations, through implementations of taxation, just like this one, the Pigovian tax. Okay, in order to mitigate the emissions of greenhouse gases. However, some economists are also arguing that we are at this point where we can no longer return to lesser or zero greenhouse gas emissions. What we could just do is control it, okay? Maintain certain levels, okay? There are even theories or suggestions for one to build an artificial ozone layer, a man-made artificial ozone layer to um, compensate the what we have destroyed in the past. And again, like what I have mentioned in the past discussions, we can see that we are now racing on discovering new planets. Okay, so you can see space missions being done by countries left and right. Okay, that is because they are looking forward in the future wherein we can no longer control climate change here, and Earth becomes hotter, and it's much more expensive, and it would cost much more energy to live. Okay, so with that, I'm leaving you a couple of questions that will serve as your assignment. So I'll be placing this in your MS Teams, and kindly answer it in the given time period. With that, thank you so much, and I hope that you have learned something from this very short discussion. And yes, I will see you on my future videos and my future lessons. Thank you so much. God bless everyone.